soul. Yes, sir. On my soul. Hey, yo, listen, y'all. I've been doing this shit for...
Live television is a high-wire act where anything can happen, but sometimes things go past the point of no return. We've seen heated arguments, dramatic walk-offs, and shocking outbursts, but today we're looking at the ultimate taboo of talk shows, the moment a guest decides words aren't enough. Get ready for on-air chaos because we're counting down 24 guests who actually punched hosts on live TV. During a live episode of That Was the Week That Was, former RAF pilot Desmond Leslie charged the set and punched host Bernard Levin in anger over a critical review of Leslie's then-wife's show. The on-air assault unfolded unfiltered, no delay, no warning, leaving studio and home audiences stunned. Cameras scrambled, the studio floor manager hurried in, and the clip remains one of the earliest and most shocking stage invasions in British broadcasting. Leslie later explained he'd attacked out of loyalty after Levin's newspaper critique of his wife's performance. Broadcasters had no delay buffer in 1963, so millions witnessed what is widely regarded as the first unscripted punch on live television. This tense and bizarre interview comes from a 1985 episode of the British talk show, Russell Hardy. The guest was the iconic and unpredictable model and singer, Grace Jones. Things went south almost immediately when the host, Russell Hardy, asked Jones if she was wearing perfume. Her reply that she smelled of her own body odor led Hardy to suggest keeping the conversation on a slightly higher level. From that point on, Jones became visibly irritated, stating that the interview had been going on too long already. She then turned her back completely on Hardy. When he asked her to turn around, she refused and then physically lashed out, repeatedly slapping the host. A visibly flustered Hardy attempted to regain control, but the interview had completely derailed into one of live television's most uncomfortable and infamous confrontations. This infamous moment of on-air aggression comes from a 1991 episode of Australia's The Midday Show. The argument involved conservative television host Ron Casey and singer Normie Rowe. The two were engaged in a heated debate about the monarchy when things turned physical. The verbal sparring quickly escalated into a full-blown fistfight. Casey stood up and shoved Rowe, and the two began trading blows right on the studio set. The host and other guests could only watch in stunned disbelief as the two men brawled on live television, creating one of the most shocking and talked-about moments in Australian TV history. This heated exchange took place on The Jay Leno Show in 2010 and featured fellow late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. The feud between the two comedians had been simmering since 2009, when NBC's controversial decision to move Leno back to The Tonight Show after a brief retirement caused a public backlash, with many, including Kimmel, siding against Leno. When Kimmel appeared on Leno's show, he didn't hold back, making a series of critical and unfiltered jabs at his former boss. Leno, in a move he later admitted was a mistake, chose to air the segment completely unedited. He later stated that he trusted someone and was now paying the price for that decision. While the two have reportedly made peace since, the tense and raw on-air confrontation remains a legendary moment in late-night television history. The Late Show with David Letterman features fellow host Jimmy Kimmel and dives deep into one of late night's most infamous feuds. The conversation centers on the 2010 late-night wars involving Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien. Kimmel recounts his role in the drama, which included him openly mocking Jay Leno on his own show. The tension peaked when Kimmel appeared as a guest on The Jay Leno Show. Kimmel describes how Leno, who initially seemed to find the impersonations funny, later admitted to feeling completely sucker-punched by the pointed and aggressive questions Kimmel asked him on his own turf. This on-air confrontation, fueled by years of backstage drama and loyalty to David Letterman, became a legendary chapter in the bitter battle for late-night supremacy. There's live reporting, and then there's this level of unexpected escalation. During a street interview in Harlem in April 2025, pro-life journalist Savannah Craven-Antau was asking pedestrians about abortion alternatives when the tone turned volatile. That's when Brianna Rivers, the interviewee, sucker-punched her, knocking her off balance and causing visible injuries right on camera. Live on social media, the clip went viral in minutes. Bloodied and requiring stitches, Craven-Antau clutched her face as pandemonium erupted. Meanwhile, Brianna Rivers was arrested and charged with second-degree assault, claiming she felt provoked. But under the spotlight few reporters expected. In a moment of podcasting chaos from May 2022, a verbal disagreement violently turned physical. The incident took place on The Coco Show, hosted by Coco, with rapper BFG Strap as the guest. After a tense argument over respect and street credibility, the host stood up to confront the rapper. BFG Strap responded by rising from his seat and landing a clean, stunning uppercut that sent the host reeling backward. The shocking on-air assault was captured on the live stream and quickly went viral across social media, becoming an infamous example of interviews gone wrong. Confrontation is from a particularly volatile episode of The Jerry Springer Show. The show brought together members of the Ku Klux Klan, including a Grand Dragon named Mike McQueenie, and activists who opposed their views. The stated goal was to try and convince the Klan members to leave the organization. The episode was tense from the start, with the KKK members expressing racist and anti-Semitic views, claiming pride in their white heritage, and comparing the KKK to groups like the NAACP. The confrontation exploded when civil rights leader Irv Rubin, founder of the Jewish Defense League, was brought on stage to set them straight. Almost immediately, a physical brawl broke out between Rubin and several of the Klan members. Host Jerry Springer had to personally intervene, telling Rubin that violence didn't make him any better than the people he was confronting. Rubin defended his actions, declaring that he wouldn't back down in the face of bullies. The show devolved into further chaos, with Springer ultimately calling the KKK members crazy and clowns, but also issuing a stark warning that their dangerous ideas, if ignored, could become a growing cancer in our society. This legendary brawl is perhaps the most infamous moment in talk show history, happening on a 1988 episode of Geraldo. The show, titled Teen Hate Mongers, brought together a volatile mix of guests. On one side were civil rights activists Roy Innis and Rabbi Mordecai Levy. On the other were white supremacist skinheads, including John Metzger of the White Aryan Resistance. The tension, already high, exploded after Metzger directed a racial insult at Roy Innis, calling him Uncle Tom. Innis stood up and began to choke Metzger, sparking an all-out, chair-throwing brawl on the set. The chaos quickly engulfed the entire stage, with guests, audience members, and security all getting involved in the melee. During the riot, a chair was thrown that struck host Geraldo Rivera directly in the face, breaking his nose. Despite the injury and the complete breakdown of his show, a bloodied Rivera continued the broadcast after the stage was cleared. The incident became a cultural touchstone, cementing Geraldo's reputation for controversial and explosive television. This moment of daytime television mayhem comes from an episode of the Steve Wilkos Show. The show, known for its intense and often physical confrontations, reached a new level of chaos when host Steve Wilkos was violently attacked by a guest. During a heated segment, a male guest, enraged by the discussion, in the chaos, a metal bowl flew off the table and smashed into Steve's head, knocking him off balance and temporarily blocking his vision. A producer for the show, reflecting on the incident, described his shock and the immediate fear that his career was over after witnessing the host get assaulted on his own stage. The dramatic on-air attack stands as one of the most violent and shocking moments in the history of confrontational talk shows. The Steve Wilkos Show, a program famous for its heated and often volatile confrontations. In this clip, host Steve Wilkos interviews a male guest accused of suffocating his infant daughter. The guest becomes defensive when Wilkos questions him about taking anger management classes, boasting that he could host a better show than Steve. Wilkos fires back, telling him they are always looking for daytime talent, and he should apply. The confrontation reaches its peak when Wilkos directly asks the guest why he was accused of abusing his 3- or 4-month-old daughter when she suffocated. The guest stumbles over his words, claiming not to understand the question, to which Wilkos replies, "If you're going to be a talk show host, you got to be quicker than them." This wild brawl comes from a political talk show in the country of Georgia. The on-air fight erupted between two politicians after a heated debate turned ugly. The politician in the black shirt, infuriated by the discussion, suddenly threw a glass of water on the other man. This act of disrespect immediately triggered a physical altercation, with both men leaping from their seats to throw punches at each other. The female host bravely tried to intervene, stepping between the two men to break up the fight, but the brawl continued around her, creating a scene of complete and utter chaos on the live broadcast. This explosive confrontation comes from a Russian talk show where a debate about the financial crisis turned into a physical assault. The brawl involved two wealthy businessmen, Alexander Lebedev and Sergei Polonsky. During the heated discussion, Lebedev, who was a former KGB agent, suddenly lunged across the stage and punched Polonsky directly in the face. The shocking attack sent Polonsky tumbling backward out of his chair. The show's host and other guests were left in stunned silence as the two men were separated. The incident, which was broadcast on Russian television, quickly went viral around the world. A live broadcast from the Georgian parliament in April 2024 captured the moment a political debate turned into a physical assault. The chaos erupted during a tense committee hearing over a controversial foreign agents bill. While the leader of the ruling party, Mamuka Mdinaradze, was speaking at the podium, opposition leader Aleko Elisashvili stormed across the room. Elisashvili then delivered a stunning punch directly to Mdinaradze's head. The on-air attack immediately triggered a wider brawl among other politicians in the room, forcing the live television feed to be cut. This dramatic on-air fight comes from an Egyptian talk show and features two prominent sports commentators, Ahmed Shober and Ahmed El Tayeb. The tension between the two had been building for some time. Shober, a former player for the Al Ahly club, had previously helped El Tayeb get jobs at various sports channels. However, Shober accused El Tayeb of being biased against the Al Ahly club and of trying to incite conflict between Al Ahly and their rivals, Zamalek, as part of a Qatari agenda. The argument escalated when Shober also claimed El Tayeb was fired from a previous job for using politically charged language during a match commentary. The simmering feud finally boiled over, live on air. After a heated verbal exchange, Shober stood up, threw a glass of water at El Tayeb, and then physically attacked him, throwing punches before the two were separated. This physical altercation erupted during a press conference in Germany and involved two members of the country's left party, Gregor Gysi and Dieter Dame. The conflict was sparked by a previous incident where Dame had physically assaulted a journalist. At the press conference, a man at the podium, a member of the left party's board, began to address the assault, stating that Dame had been warned and that the issue was a personal matter. At that point, another man, Health Minister Daniel Barr, who was called Mr. Wrath in the source material, approached the podium and confronted the speaker, accusing him of a cowardly assault from behind and calling him a coward. Immediately after being called a coward, the man at the podium struck Barr directly in the face. The slap ignited chaos as other people on the stage rushed to intervene and separate the two men. This seismic event in pop culture history took place at the 94th Academy Awards in March 2022. The chaos began when comedian Chris Rock, while presenting the award for Best Documentary Feature, made a joke about Jada Pinkett Smith's shaved head, referencing the movie G.I. Jane. While Will Smith was initially seen laughing at the joke, his wife Jada was visibly unamused, rolling her eyes in clear disapproval. What followed was a moment that no one saw coming. Smith calmly walked onto the stage, approached Rock, and slapped him directly across the face in front of a stunned global audience. After returning to his seat, Smith continued to yell at the presenter, shouting, "Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth." A stunned Chris Rock attempted to continue, stating it was the greatest night in the history of television. Less than an hour later, Smith won the Best Actor award for his role in King Richard, and in his emotional acceptance speech, he apologized to the Academy, but not to Rock. The slap heard round the world instantly became one of the most infamous and shocking moments in the history of live television. The next day, Smith issued a public apology to Chris Rock via Instagram, calling his own behavior unacceptable and inexcusable. This chaotic scene unfolded on a Jordanian talk show during a live debate about the civil war in Syria. The on-air battle featured two journalists, Shaker al-Jahari and Mohammed al-Jayusi, whose differing views on the conflict quickly led to a complete breakdown of civility. The argument became increasingly personal and heated until Al-Jayusi accused Al-Jahari of being a deviant, which was the final straw. The two men then began to shove the studio table back and forth at each other, eventually breaking it. The host's attempts to separate the two were futile, as they continued their bizarre table tug-of-war until the broadcast was cut. This dramatic on-air clash took place in Pakistan and involved politician Jamil Gishkori and journalist Javed Chaudhry. The argument erupted during a live news broadcast, quickly escalating from a heated debate to a physical altercation. As the argument intensified, Chaudhry, the man in the middle, rose from his seat in an attempt to attack Gishkori. The politician on the right then threw his shoe at Chaudhry, a major sign of disrespect in the culture. The host, seated on the far left, could only watch in shock as the two men began to fight, forcing the broadcast to be abruptly cut. This on-air explosion happened in Nigeria on the Africa independent television program Focus. The two men involved were Chief Tony Omobere, a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, and Chief Austin Edihan, a member of the All Progressives Congress. The argument erupted during a discussion about local politics and the performance of the then governor, Adams Oshimhole. The debate quickly grew personal and heated. Omobere became increasingly agitated with Edihan's defense of the governor, leading to the two men shouting over each other. The situation spiraled out of control as the men stood up and began physically threatening each other across the table. The host remained seated, seemingly stunned and unable to de-escalate the situation as the two politicians continued their aggressive confrontation on live television. This violent clash took place on the Russian political talk show Process and involved Ukrainian guests Yuri Kot and Vyacheslav Kovtun. The confrontation was ignited when Kot began discussing the political sentiments of Ukrainian youth, mentioning that his own son, who lives in Kiev, respects the heroes of the Great Patriotic War. Kovtun perceived a threat in Kot's statements, which led to a tense, direct confrontation between the two men. As the argument escalated, Kovtun threatened Kot. The show's moderator stepped in to try and de-escalate the situation, but the damage was done. The host ultimately asked Kovtun to leave the studio to prevent any further conflict. This brawl comes from a political talk show in Ukraine. The fight breaks out between two guests after a heated argument. The man in the lighter suit can be seen shouting and pointing at the other man before the physical confrontation begins. The two men then lunge at each other, trading blows and wrestling on the studio floor. Several other people on set rush in to separate the two men, but the shouting continues even as they are pulled apart, making for a moment of intense, uncontrolled chaos on live television. This on-air clash took place in the country of Georgia during a live television debate in December 2008. The confrontation was between Koka Gunsadze, an opposition politician, and Georgi Kandilaki, a lawmaker from the ruling party at the time. The two politicians exchanged verbal barbs, with Kandilaki calling on Gunsadze to be constructive and telling him he was an impolite person. This prompted Gunsadze to tell Kandilaki to keep you tongue behind you teeth. The argument then escalated dramatically when Gunsadze hurled his glass of water at Kandilaki. He quickly grabbed Kandilaki's own glass and threw that as well, before standing up, punching the lawmaker in the face a couple of times, and then walking out of the studio. After the program resumed, MP Kandilaki apologized to the audience for the incident. This violent on-air clash took place in the country of Georgia and involved two members of parliament, Koba Davitashvili of the Dream Party and Sergo Ratiani of the United National Movement. During a heated live debate, Davitashvili became increasingly agitated, telling Ratiani, "I will cut off your snake head." Ratiani responded by saying that Davitashvili was behaving badly and that his actions were not adequate. The final straw came when Davitashvili called Ratiani a jerk, a rascal, and a murderer. Following that insult, both politicians leaped from their seats and began to physically fight, throwing punches at each other on the set. Others in the studio quickly intervened to separate the two men, but not before the live broadcast captured the shocking scene of political debate descending into a full-blown fistfight. From political debates that devolved into brawls to interviews that ended with a sucker punch, these moments show that sometimes the most dangerous place to be is in the host chair. It just proves that in the unpredictable world of live television, absolutely anything can happen. If you were shocked by these on-air assaults, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more unbelievable moments. Thanks for watching.